Today we are trying to understand what exactly is this practice. Now, in the past few videos, I've been talking about this particular practice, and I've never specifically went into details about it. I've also talked that there is this formula where you can use. So the entire objective of today is going to be trying to explain what this is and how you can incorporate it. Now, in Buddhism, we had this idea, and this idea which was in the world for a period of time now, and I've also been lost in this particular idea that you have to go, that meditation is something you do when you sit down and breathe in and out and focus on your breathing. If you take various approaches to meditation, be it Headspace or be it all these other Western meditation, when you think of the word meditation, you think of someone who's sitting down and focusing on their breath and reaching a certain amount of peace, tranquility. However, and even if you look at this Buddha statue, like behind you, the Buddha is sitting down with his legs crossed, hands over there, and focusing on his breathing. However, this is not the type of meditation, and meditation is also this English kind of word which has been incorporated with that particular idea. However, the approach of bhavana, the approach of Buddhist meditation, or I should say the approach that the Buddha preached in order to achieve Nibbana, in order to come to Nibbana, in order to destroy the ego, in order to be free of all dukkha, is not through breath meditation. Because if you even logically think about it, breath meditation is not rocket science. Even if there's a civilization where there was no kind of Buddha or whatever, if a person, goes into a quiet environment, closes their eyes, what they're going to be aware of first is their thoughts. And next, once they quieten down their thoughts, is their breathing. Okay? And if they stay within their breathing for a certain period of time, they will move into peace, into tranquility, into a certain kind of samadhi, into a certain kind of joy, calm, and this beautiful kind of feeling. These things exist, but it is not what the Buddha taught. And the reason I tell this is because if it is the meaning, then everyone should really be doing it. Everyone should try it, and they should reach that kind of peace, and then enlightenment should exist there. Okay. Now the other factor is, if this was what the Buddha taught, then all the monks in the Aranyas would be right. Because think about it, they have rejected society somewhat. They've gone away from society. They've gone into the forest, into these really quiet places. They've sat cross-legged and they've quietened down their mind and gone inwards. Now, this will definitely, if done right, give you a certain sense of tranquility and peace. But again, this is not Nibbana. This is not the path which was taught by Lord Buddha. And the reason I tell this is because you don't need a Buddha to come and tell this, no? I mean, it's not that hard. Even Hinduism, even in the Hindu Agama, even they have established this kind of techniques. Not only that, I'm sure various other practices all throughout the world have established this kind of technique. So the real question is, what makes the Buddha's teaching so special? Yeah? And what exactly did the Buddha teach? In order to come to this, we had to realize what the Lord Buddha talked about, the Four Noble Truths. Now, I'm going to tell it in like this simplified way. Is basically the first noble truth is that dukkha exists. Like dukkha is the first noble truth. And by dukkha here, he doesn't really mean this kind of sadness we feel. It's not really the emotion of dukkha. It's more really the truth of dukkha. Dukkha is something which exists in each and every one of us. If you were to ask me what I think is something which connects everything which is conscious, every living being which is conscious is dukkha. Dukkha exists in all this. Everything which has a mind has dukkha. That is what connects everyone, dukkha. Even Lord Buddha talked about different realms, different dimensions, that we are in this human dimension, and there are more subtle dimensions once you go up, up, up. And he said, even in these particular dimensions, the dukkha existed. And the entire point of Buddhism is not to get to a higher dimension. The Buddha did not reject the existence of heaven. He actually said there are multiple levels of heaven. There are multiple dimensions of where the mind can function, where the mind can exist. And the physical body, it gets more and more subtle, more and more non-existent once you go to these higher states of consciousness. But he said, even here, that this dukkha existed. And most of the religions, their approach is to go to these higher states of existence. But what Buddhism says is, even there is a fundamental problem even in these higher dimensions. The biggest problem we can see over here, but even these highest dimensions, these problems are there. And this problem of dukkha is there. And the only way to get rid of this is not to aim for a higher consciousness, but to get rid of this mind altogether. So maybe that's going in a bit too deep, but then let me backtrack again. So the first noble truth is dukkha. And there is a reason why dukkha exists. There is a reason why dukkha exists. And that is what we call dukkata hetuva. Dukkata hetuva is avidyava. Now I love this word avidyava. Avidyava is the opposite of vidyava. Vidyava in this sense does not mean physical science. Because when we take Vidya is commonly translated into science and then Western science and like what we believe to be science. But there is an ultimate science to this world. There is an ultimate science why the mind works the way it works. And if you really understand your external environment and your internal mind and how they all essentially they move along the same nature. Once you understand this, not as a concept, not as a theoretical concept. Now we know that E is equal to mc squared. We know that we've been taught that, why the sky is blue is because of the refraction of light. And then when it refracts in this certain way, what we see is basically blue. We know this as a theory. But this kind of theoretical knowledge and this intuitive knowledge are two separate things. We can't by heart something and understand this kind of thing. It's an intuitive kind of understanding that comes, and that is vidya. And the whole reason we are going in this particular sansara is because we do not have this vidya. Is because what we are is essentially avidya. Avidya connects all living beings. Everything. I believe like the connecting point of all beings is not this one consciousness or anything. It's avidya. The fact that we don't understand what existence is. Because if we did understand what existence is, we would be free of dukkha. Okay. So again, dukkha, and the reason for this dukkha is avidya, this non-understanding. It is ignorance, like another translation of it, ignorance to the truth of what it is. Hari. Now it gets better. Then there is dukkha nirodha. So what is dukkha nirodha? The state of being, or the state where there is no avidya, where there is no ignorance, where there is no understanding. That is, there is only understanding and knowing. There is only knowing of true, there's only true knowledge of what this world is. That state is what we call dukkha nirodha. Okay? And a person who's in that state is basically what Buddhism calls an arahat. And the path, then the fourth one, so we have dukkha, dukkata hetuva, dukkha nirodha marge. And basically the pathway, in a simplified way, the pathway in order to get to this dukkha nirodha. And that is the Noble Eightfold Path, or the Aryashtangika Marga. Or that is the path that the Buddha taught. So that is essentially the practice in order to get over here. Now, I like this word truths. Now, these are 4 noble truths. Until a Buddha comes, this exists, dukkha exists. And a reason for dukkha also exists, but this reason is unknown. Like, unless a Buddha tells it, a person can't really comprehend or understand it. That's the significance of a Buddha. Then this dukkha nirodha exists and a path exists. So these are certain truths. Now, in order to accept these 3, initially, I feel like you need a little bit of faith, a little bit of confidence in what this man has told 2600 years ago. Because otherwise, it's hard to accept it. There has to be faith, and there also has to be a sort of understanding like this. Like, I see the world. I kind of see the world, and I've seen what people do. Like, I've seen people achieve, set goals, may become successful, become important people in society. But I also see that they are not really happy where they are, and they're not really content where they are. And a person but there might be a set of people who genuinely believe happiness lies there. Okay, so they may work really hard and get to that particular place and then say, okay, I thought happiness would be here, but there's something wrong over here. There must be something deeper to life than this. Okay, then, to fall into this path is not particularly easy, because a lot of people can take different approaches. One such approach is, they can believe like going into your mind is what's going to give you happiness. So they can like retreat away from all this society. They can reject society, go into the forest, focus on their breath, focus and go inwards and inwards. Maybe even do a chant, different types of meditation, and go inwards and reach this inwardly kind of happiness. So that's also another approach. And there are people who try various approaches in this world, like, maybe have a family, have kids, maybe a leader, go into music and go into arts, go into science, go into become a doctor, engineer. Like, the world has given us this multitude of opportunities for us to try out. But what the Buddha said is, there is no happiness which lies, there is no real happiness. There is happiness. I think that's also very important. There is joy, there is tranquility, there is a certain sense of contentment. But we cannot sustain this. It goes away. And that is the inherent problem of everything in this world. Everything in this world has this sense of uppada titi banga. Basically, there is going to be birth of it, there's going to be sustenance of it, and there's going to be the death of it. Everything follows this. Even if you take your life, first you are born, and first it's like a graph, first you are born, and then you develop, and then you develop your childhood, teenage years, then you are in your adolescence where you are at your optimum, and then itself, there's like decay, and it goes away, and then it eventually leads to death and gone. Everything follows this. Even if you're listening to music and you have a certain sense of happiness with like a song or something, first there's like the birth of this happiness, and then there's the existence of this happiness there, and you will reach an optimum point where you're really enjoying a song, and then eventually that liking to that song will decrease, and then it'll die off. But the nature of the mind is, it really wants to keep this alive. The nature of the mind is, it really wants to experience joy. But the problem of the world is, you can't sustain it. So for something which is going to always go down, the response of the mind to this is attachment. The response of the mind to this is tanha. The response of the mind is to try to grasp this and keep it at a up. And our entire lives is this. Our entire lives is to try to grasp something and keep it at an up level. But the nature of the world is, it's going to keep on going down, 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 down. But we can't help it. We can't help it. We are always going to try to keep it up, try to keep it up, try to keep it up. That's why, once you listen to a particular song, you are going to want to say you really enjoy a song, say you really like watch a movie and you really enjoy that movie, it's going to give you joy, happiness. Then that exists. You can't deny that there is no happiness there. As in, I mean, it depends on the individual. Like different songs, different movies, maybe different. You don't even like songs or movies. It can be something else. There'll be a certain sense of joy. So if you're at the zero state, you will reach this higher state. But the inherent truth is that no matter what, you can't keep that happiness at that level. And that will always go down. But your mind is so desperate, it will always try to come to that plus one level. If you're at a zero, it will try to come to that plus one level. But it will always go back to zero and sometimes even minus. Now that's a whole other thing. I'll get into that later. So the nature of the mind is always, it will try to come to that plus one level. I mean, the reason people do degrees, they try to get jobs, reason they actually do anything, the true reason is because Athule, they inside them, they believe that once you get to a particular state, be it a doctor, engineer, a father, mother, a teacher, whatever like floats your boat, when you get to that state, you believe in that you are going to become a plus one, like your life is going to be slightly a bit more better. But the truth is, that's absolute bullshit. It's not going to be that way. You are going to get a certain amount of happiness for a certain period of time. Have you seen those BuzzFeed quizzes? Those quizzes you do on the internet? You put a little bit of thought, you put a little bit of this thing into these quizzes and maybe calculate something or like think a little bit and answer them. And then say you get 90% or something, you will feel a certain sense of joy. Okay, but that joy is not enough to last for the rest of your life. No, you will still have to go on finding different things to keep you occupied, to keep you happy. In the same way, say you spend 4, 5, 6 years like me, like 7, 8 years now on a degree. It's going to make you happy for a little period of time. But that happiness is not going to last, and this is the inherent problem. See, you can't, if you scored really well because of your O levels and your A levels, the amount of happiness, like you can't survive on that happiness. No, you can't be like, damn, I did my O levels really well, and look back when you're 50 and be happy about that, and that happiness is going to be enough to sustain for the rest of your life. No, that's not possible. The problem is we have to always keep doing something to stay content, to stay occupied, to stay happy. Yeah. So that's that. And the problem is, in order to bring up a new thing, in order to keep it going, we need the mind should have a sticky holding kind of nature. So whenever one song finishes and the pleasure of that is dying down, the mind will quickly grab to another song or grab to another thing. And life is essentially this. It's grabbing one thing after the other and trying to sustain it so difficultly, like it's a difficult process, but still we are doing it. Now, the other thing is, now say I say this and it makes logical sense to you, you can't still let go, because that's not how the mind works. The mind is kind of tricky. It won't like let you let go of it so easily. Yeah. The final point where you can ultimately let go is when you reach the end. Is when dukkha is nirodha and arahat, enlightenment, nibbana, whatever you want to call it. But there's something like this also. Say you let go of the external thing. Okay, like say you really enjoy music, you see that there's a problem in listening to music, that you are forever going to be trapped in this eternal trap of finding music, and you are going to be like, no, I'm not going to listen to music anymore, I'm going to put it aside and I'm done with music. That's a wrong approach. Because no matter how much you try to convince yourself that now you are beyond music, you are not beyond music. What you're doing is you're fooling yourself. Okay, say it's with food. Now this is the problem. I think a lot of monks have made. Like say you are eating some good food. Okay, say you are eating some good food, and the food is really tasty, and so you realize that the next time you eat, you are now attached to that good food, and now you're going to want that good food again. So you realize this inadequacy, the unable to enjoy any kind of food, is because now you've attached to that food, and now you have a standard for that food. Now you're going to want that food. Okay, and so you realize, no, the problem is the good food, so I'm not going to eat any more good food. I'm done with good food. That is a wrong approach. So good food wasn't the problem. Good food wasn't the problem. The problem was the nature of our mind, which always attaches. So no matter how much you eliminate the good food, that's not going to help you. That's not going to help your mind realize. Because say you are getting good food, you are getting some tasty pizza, okay, and now you decide, the problem is with this pizza, and I shouldn't eat the pizza. And you stay like this for like 5 years or something, and then someone comes and gives you pizza, and you have no option. May say all other food sources are gone, and you have no option but to eat it. Won't you really enjoy that thing? You will, and you'll automatically get attached to it. So suppression here is never the answer. So rejecting good music, rejecting good food, and rejecting all these sensory pleasures is not the answer. Because once you reject it, it's another thing. That is a worldly approach, rejecting these things. The path of Buddha, the path where the Buddha preached, is different. It is a path of investigation. It is a path of looking at the mind. I think really that's all you have to do. The path is basically, it's a very dynamic path, okay? So your approaches always have to change. You can't be stuck to one thing. A majority of what I do in my practice, and this also changes from time to time, but a majority of what I do is proper looking at the mind, not at the external, at the mind. But I only look at my mind when it bothers me, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, what's the point of getting rid of the good shit? There is no point. No. What we want to get rid of is when our mind is troubling us, when our mind is giving us anxiety, when our mind is becoming a burden, when our mind is making us sad, when it's getting us down. That's what we want to get rid of. No. We don't want to get rid of the good part of life. No. Who wants to get rid of the good part of life? We don't have to. What we need to do is to get rid of the bad shit. And I think anyone can agree with that, no? Who wants to suffer? Who wants to get into dukkha? No one. No one wants their mind to be in this depressed kind of state where it takes everything very seriously and life has become very heavy. Life has become a big burden and we can't enjoy life. Who wants that kind of mindset? Buddhism basically shows us how to completely eliminate that negative. And once you eliminate that negative completely, it doesn't mean that particular individual is going to be this very stoic kind of person where they are going to be extremely calm and quiet and look around slowly. That is a big fat illusion. That's because there haven't been people who finished this path. So far, for the longest period of time, Buddhism in our country has been people who are political or people who teach suppression. There have been very little, almost none, very little individuals, very little monks or nuns or maybe not even in robes who have achieved enlightenment, who have reached this dukkha nirodha, this arahatship, this enlightenment, this nibbana. Very little people have. I actually think that a person who hasn't reached this end is also has to tell this. Like for example, say there's a monk who is reading up on these scriptures, reading up on this menu for Nibbana. As in, it's going to tell us, if we do this, it's going to reach us to Nibbana. And he basically reads that, studies it, and tells that to the people. I think that person should not be your teacher. Your teacher should be a person who has finished this path. If your objective is to get rid of all this dukkha, if your objective is to understand what consciousness is, to understand what the mind is, to understand what the world is, then it has to be, ideally, it should be someone who has finished this path. Those people are extremely, they are fit for the job. They are fit for the job because they've completed that path. Yeah? Yeah. But now to accept, now this is a whole other topic. To accept that a particular person has completed that path, has finished that path, is a whole other thing. Okay, because that requires a kind of faith. I'll tell you why. Because you can't do a blood test and say if a person is an arahat or not. You can't do a blood test and confirm whether he's Nibbana positive or Nibbana negative. Whether he's Sotapanna, Sakudagami, stream enter, whatever you call it. You can't do a blood test and tell these things. I think a Buddha could. Apparently, according to the scriptures, a Buddha could look at a person and tell if they were an arahat or not. But even a arahat, there's something like this, even a person who has reached the end, even who has reached Nibbana, cannot look at another person who has reached Nibbana and 100% tell, this guy is also enlightened. That's also not possible. Only a Buddha apparently has the kind of wisdom to look into it and to understand that jnani. Anyway, that's again going out of the topic. Where was I? Yes. So the objective of this was to talk about what is this practical path and how do we apply it in our day-to-day lives. Okay. So 3 words here. In a very simplified sense, all you need is 3 words, and these 3 words are anicca, dukkha, anatta. Okay, Lord Buddha said everything in this world, everything is anicca. The fundamental characteristic of our mind, of our internal world and our external world is anicca, anicca. Now, the conventional translation for this word has been impermanence. Although this is an alright translation, there is a bit of a deeper aspect to this word. Anicca, the opposite of anicca is icca, anicca. Icca means kamathi se or to your liking. Anicca means not to your liking. So the fundamental nature of every single thing to ever exist is anicca. So what does that mean? Everything is not to your liking, or in a better way to put it, nothing in this world can be maintained to your liking. Then one person can argue like this. How is that possible? I'm eating this pizza, I'm eating this good food, and I'm liking it. I obviously like it. It's to my liking. I am having sex and I'm obviously enjoying it. How can you say it's not to my liking? Yes. The problem is, although at that particular point it is to your liking, the entire thing of it as a whole is going to give you a lot of dukkha. This method of vidarshana, I think I will talk in another separate video. If you are interested in that, please click on that. And if you like this kind of content, please do subscribe. Please do share it around. And if you have any more suggestions or questions, please leave a comment, or you can reach me on Instagram or on YouTube and leave a comment or send a message. Yeah, thank you very much. I hope this helped. I hope I'm very much open to discussion on these certain topics, because something before I came across these kind of teachings, I realized that even though I was very interested in Buddhism since very early, since I was like 13, maybe that's all I remember. Since I was very young, I was really into this, not really into going to temples and doing pujas or anything like that. I was very interested in finding out meaning, in trying to understand what everything is like, and not even in like a scientific molecular sense, trying to understand, like, why do we exist? Why does consciousness exist? And things like that. And I think Buddhism definitely has the answers, and I've been seeing like some massive progress in understanding. Yeah, so if you all have any questions or any comments, please do leave them. And in the next video, I will be talking about on this Vidarshana, on this Vipassana meditation, the kind of meditation, this Dukkha Nirodha Marga, the last path, which is basically essentially only people who go in this path can really be called Sangha. Okay, the rest of it are people who are Buddhist for conventional reasons. No one can be born a Buddhist. That's a conventional Sangha. That's not a real Sangha. The real Sangha is people who are going in search of Nibbana. That's the real Sangha, who are following this path. And no one can be like, it can't be written in your birth certificate whether you are a Buddhist or not. That's BS. I don't accept that at all. Now, just because a person is born a Buddhist doesn't mean they're really a part of the Sangha, doesn't mean they're really a Buddhist. Just because a person puts on an external robe doesn't mean they're part of the Sangha either. The Sangha is the people who are walking on the path, who started walking on the path, or who are on the path to walking on the path, and the people who finished walking the path and, completed their journey. Dukkha Nirodha Karapu Kattiya. That's the real Sangha. The people who are on the path to Nibbana and the people who've reached Nibbana. So yeah, I will speak more on what this path is, and this practical way in how to apply it in our day-to-day lives to understand what our minds is. Yeah. So see you in the next